Your brain is connected to your spinal cord, and it is also protected by the skull. The largest part of your brain is what is referred to as the cerebrum, which also is the left and right cerebral hemispheres. So the largest part is the cerebrum, which has two cerebral hemispheres. You might have heard of being right-brained or left-brained. That's what they're referring to, the right and the left cerebral hemispheres. The right brain tends to be more visual, more creative. The left brain is more logical. So when we look at these cerebral hemispheres, they also have lobes. So we can talk about the 5 lobes of this brain, and these correspond for the most part to the skull bones that you already learned. So we have the occipital lobe, which sits underneath the occipital bone. I almost put bone there. Should be occipital lobe. So this would be the back of the head. And that is noted for being the center of your visual processing. So if you get hit in the back of the head, oftentimes there is a problem. There could be a problem with damage and your inability to see things or understand what you're seeing. So you have the occipital lobe. We have 2 temporal lobes, but we'll just put the temporal lobe, which is underneath the temporal bone, the sides. And then we have the parietal lobes. So just in one hemisphere, there'd just be one lobe, the parietal lobe. So how many is that? That's 1, 2, 3. Then we have the frontal lobe. That's most notable for being like who you are, your personality wise, your conscious decisions, your thinking of the future would be the frontal lobe. And then we have one that is kind of hidden, and it is called the insula lobe. So it's weird, it's actually underneath. It's actually kind of in the temporal region, but it's inside of another lobe. And so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lobes in one hemisphere, right? But we have other 2 hemispheres. Okay, so let's look at a diagram of these lobes. They're most notable because they consist of this convoluted structure. So this is my cerebrum right here. This would be like the frontal lobe. This is the occipital lobe. This would be the parietal lobe. And then on the side here, but we have it's a sagittal section. We're not seeing the temporal lobes or the insular lobes. So this is one hemisphere, but we're just looking at it from the inside, the medial side of the hemisphere. So this would be on this diagram right here. This would be the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe, and then your insular lobe would kind of be inside there, inside that groove. So you can see that we have these ridges and we have grooves, and they have names. So when we look at these, we could say that the ridges are called the gyri or a gyrus. So these are ridges. And then the sulci, or one sulcus, that would be singular, that would be the grooves. So ridges and grooves. When we look at the histology of the brain, it is kind of interesting because the outer part of the cerebrum is called the cerebral cortex, and it contains gray matter. The gray matter in the brain is on the outside, and the white matter is on the inside. So that's exactly opposite of the spinal cord. So we have the cerebral cortex. So this is the outermost part of the cerebrum. and it contains gray matter. So these are nerve cell bodies that have migrated there, and it is the conscious part of the brain. The only conscious part of the brain. So let's look at the histology. So this is a section, a frontal section through the brain so that you can see the ridges, the gyri. So this would be a gyri, this would be a sulci, and you can see on this thin layer on the outside, that is what we refer to as the cortex. That contains gray matter. When we look at the cerebral white matter, the cerebral white matter is composed of myelinated axons. The myelinated axons in the central nervous system, the bundles of them are called tracts. So we have the cerebral white matter. Oops. These are bundles of myelinated axons. Oops, myelinated, something happened here. Myelinated axons. Oh. My screen sharing stopped somehow. Bundles of myelinated axons, and they're called tracts. So let's see if I can get back into my Zoom. Okay, I guess I'm just gonna have to stop there. So bundles of myelinated axons called tracts, T-R-A-C-T-S, tracts. And so it's kind of interesting that these tracts can connect parts of the cerebrum. They can also connect one part of your cerebral cortex to another. They can also connect to your spinal cord. And so they are sending action potentials down through the axons. So that is the cerebral white matter.